My name is Colin Pezzano. I graduated from University of the Arts in 2014. I'm glad everyone really came out. That's really cool. So I guess let's get started. So, undergrad. When I first came to UArts, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to do industrial design. I found out very quickly that I did not like that at all, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had a friend who was going into the fibers program, so I kind of wanted to stick with him, so I went into woodworking, which was something I never did before, but I kind of had an interest as a kid. I thought it'd be cool to be like a carpenter. So I started making furniture that I thought, how do I put this, was expected. You know, I didn't really have that much other than just what was lying around at my parents' house. My parents aren't really crafty like that, so I tried making a lot of different things that I thought was expected of me, and I had my teacher Don Miller talk to me about what do you care about and what are you interested in. So after about a semester or two of struggling, I started focusing on things I was interested in, like cartoons and folklore and stuff like that. So this was the first piece that I made. I started getting interested in skin and fat folds and kind of slumpy, pathetic kind of emotions. It's another view of it. I think I was really focusing on this idea of forgotten furniture. I mean, kind of like my childhood where I didn't really think about it. I thought about what was expected. I started messing around with doing bigger stuff after that. And then started getting into cabinetry. The way I was looking at this, I think I was overcomplicating at this point, where I was trying to do more traditional ways of woodworking. And shortly after that, discovered that I could just do bandsaw boxes and that I shouldn't put so much pressure on how it's made, but more so of the imagery and the message behind it. But kind of the idea behind these cabinets is these awkward teens kind of cowering in the corner, gathering dust. So then after school, I moved to a farm with Jack Larimore and Helen Pettingill, who are both working artists. Jack does furniture and Helen does botany, works with flowers. Is that the right word? Botanical?
Botanicals?
Yes. So I stayed with them. I worked with Helen on the farm. I had access to the studio. I had won the Wingate Fellowship, so I used that money to focus on making work for a year. To be with one of the chickens. And this is the trailer that I lived in for the year. I started collecting things around the farm and making small bandsaw boxes. And then I started making boxes that were dioramas that were kind of like storytelling, personal memories. It's not as dark as it looks. I started messing around with different layouts and I had at that time I had a show at Bridget Mayer Gallery, so I started making work for that. The title of that show is Contain You, so it's a bunch of cabinets that have personal memories. This piece was refinished from my undergrad. And these are all same kind of construction, like bandsaw box construction. So after that, I moved back to Philadelphia, and I was staying with a friend, Kenny. At this point, I started working for Alex DeCorte a little bit, and I was also working out of Sculpture Gym, which no longer exists. I was doing a few commissions also in that time, so I was working out of the basement or working at a Sculpture Gym back and forth. And then I was offered a residency at University of the Arts. So I finished up some commissions that I had, some work for small shows. I started incorporating more like woodworky ideas back into the anthropomorphic. And I started designing things for my room that I finally had again. Made this dresser, made a lamp, and then I got run over by a car. So I couldn't work for a while, but luckily I had made some boxes. So I continued doing the illustration work. At this point, I had just gotten accepted into the Smithsonian craft show. So I was trying to just continue to make work, so I started making these small boxes. Doing a lot of illustration, messing around with like watercolors. I made stickers. I made posters. So when I got back on my feet, I started doing more of like production work. I came up with the idea to do a product design kind of focus for a while, and so like to separate from the artwork, called Make Friends. So I started doing small production, made a bunch of donuts, made a bunch of bowls, made these off-centered turned cactuses, little jars. These were a collaboration with Molly Bernstein, who does ceramics. Donut clock. So at this point, I was working at a NextFab, and I had gotten a job working for a couple doing public sculpture in California. So while working with them, I guess we got along really well, and they offered me a job at Penn. So I started working at Penn, and this was the first piece that I made while I was at Penn, the Band-Aid boards. And I guess like doing the whole craft show circuit, and I was a little burnt out from talking to people about woodworking. So I started making work that was a little more like tongue-in-cheek about woodworking. So this has kind of led me into the current work that I'm making, where it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek about just woodworking in general and the experience of doing the craft show circuit and all that stuff. It's a detail shot of one of the Band-Aids. This is my first marquetry piece. I started messing around with different kind of like materials. I got into felting in this piece. I got the question a lot at craft shows, what are these bowls for? So I decided to give them a purpose. This is one of the old pieces that I had made for the previous show, but I made the wooden bag to go over his head, kind of. So this is one of the pieces from the last show that I ended up setting on fire, and I documented the video with a video, and I have the ashes in a kind of slapped together reliquary. So I'm not going to play the whole thing, but just a little bit. Can I skip?
You did the whole thing.
Yeah, all the way until it fell.
Yeah.
And the falling's a little dramatic. So, and then when I was working with the gallery for the solo show, they talked about how they really liked when artists showed their process. And I don't really like people telling me what to do. So instead of showing what my process was, I rigged up my lathe to wave a surrender flag. And the title of this show was Still Life with Dead Game. And it's kind of just the idea of being like worn out and performing. So now, still working at Penn, I'm continuing doing the product design, using different tools like laser cutters to do like quicker output of product design. These are kind of like a flat pack and then the turned base. Doing little bandsaw boxes. Incense burners because school stinks. And I started working on working drawings, kind of reminiscent of IKEA. So it's supposed to be this idea of information with the lack of information. And that's it. Does anyone have any questions or? No pressure.
Any commission work?
Yeah, I've been doing a decent amount of commission work. I've been working with a interior design firm and doing a few tables for them. I work for Alex DeCorte every once in a while, so making objects for him as needed. As far as like my own personal work, not so much, but I'm still making work, so, and selling it in galleries sometimes. And
when you were staying with us, you were working on a commission that was a mirror?
Yes.
How'd that go?
Great.
Good.
Yeah, she loves it.
Show it?
Um,
Not on this.
I don't think on this,
Okay.
but
Sometime.
I have it on my phone. I'll show it to you then.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, with that dresser you made when you were in the residency, how did you get that squished effect? Was that like a material or was it carved? Or?
Oh, that's it is West System epoxy. There's a filler you can buy with the West Systems epoxy that like thickens it up. So I got it into like a putty, and then I dyed it with aniline dye, and then like the dresser is 3 individual boxes. So I'd do the one box, lay down a layer of it, then I would screw it down and let it squish out. So it was kind of just like luck of the draw, you know.
That's it, right?
Oh no, that's actually a different piece.
But is that epoxy?
No, that's actually like dragon skin, which is like a, what's it called? It's like a heavy duty rubber, like a non-tearing rubber.
And then the color, was that a pigment that was added to the mixture, or is it painted on?
It's a pigment that's added to the mixture. Yeah, it's the kind of thing like, once you put that stuff on, you can't touch it at all. You just have to let it go. So, yeah.
So you can't cultivate it, or it's
No, with that piece that is in the picture, we kind of used a heat gun to like, okay, that's good, like trying to like speed it up, but you don't really have that much control over it. It's kind of just like, is how it is.
So even of the product stuff, is that, are those on Instagram? Are you selling that stuff through Instagram, or how? What's the idea for selling those things that are more kind of batch produced?
I do craft shows every once in a while. Like I do smaller ones now. I don't really do the big stuff. I'm doing the smaller stuff, and then I have a tick tail, if you know what that is. I think they're actually a Swedish company, but it's smaller.
You want to do word unleashed?
What is it?
Love to. Tick tail?
Yeah, what's that?
It's kind of like Etsy, but it's a little more curated. It's like, it's not all the more like wild stuff. It's more geared towards artists. So it's a lot of like illustration, like prints and small sculptures, and yeah.
Yes,
So-
K-I-C.
Tick, T-I-C, T-A-I-L.
Okay.
So apropos of professional development and building a career based in the art, I mean, how effective have you found it, social media and building a presence on a platform versus showing at sort of large, well-known craft shows like the Smithsonian or the ACC shows versus smaller localized shows? And I mean, what kind of, versus the gallery environment, what kinds of balance do you find works for you, or what would you suggest for other emerging artists?
I think it really depends on who your audience is, you know, and that kind of just, you figure that out by making work or throwing a bunch of shit at a wall and see what sticks, you know. Like you do, I noticed that it's like an older crowd at the Smithsonian, obviously, which means that it's like a higher end, like you can charge more for things. As far as the social media stuff goes, I feel more comfortable doing the smaller shows because I have friends that will come out, I meet new people, you know. But it also means that the work that I'm making for that stuff is different than gallery work, you know. So I think all the avenues are useful, but I've kind of found that I enjoy more doing the small craft shows and doing the Instagram stuff or doing the small gallery kind of stuff.
Has the gallery thing kind of built on itself at all, or is that kind of like one-shot stuff? I mean, did like the Bridget Meyer thing lead to sales or further work with Bridget Meyer?
In some aspects. I recently did her benefit show where I sold some work. It was like a 2x2 square that we all had to paint, you know. So I did like some laser cutting for that with my working drawings on that. So yeah, I mean, I've worked with some galleries in like Kennett also. Yeah, it just like, it kind of like moves. You also have to figure out, I mean, I talk to a lot of artists that I work with at Penn also, and they say, you know, kind of figure out what works for you. There's some galleries that will like, that have a client base that are interested in your work, so you either like stick with them or you move on and try to find others, so it's all luck of the draw, I guess.
And work like the one where you filmed, you made a video piece and then had, I guess, display the ashes of the actual piece that was being done in the course of the video. So work like that, that's a little, well, it's speculative and generally belongs in a gallery environment. It's harder to sell that at a craft show.
Yeah.
What kind of environment do you think is best suited for that kind of work?
I think either social media or like a gallery space, like you said. And I think it's also difficult because through my process of going through school and moving through different places, my idea of what I want my work to look like has changed also, and it's like constantly fluctuating, you know, and that's why I have the product-y stuff to fulfill that kind of craft side. And then I'm actually interested in getting more into like video work also with the stuff that I'm doing, so.
Do you think you're a woodworker? No, I mean, you know, that's like an identity. It's like an identity, and I wonder if that identity isn't. I mean, anyway, that's an identity which is associated with kind of the basic craft media and how they've been in the past, and I just wonder how that fits into the way the world is now. You know?
Yeah, I don't think so, honestly.
I don't think you are either.
I mean, all the stuff that I do is within woodworking, but I think it's more to carry a dialogue than it is to the end of making furniture. Within like my personal work, at least. I mean, so. Anyone else?
Come on, guys, ask a damn question.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years from now? And then, I mean, come on, that's a question that all of you guys are probably wondering. Like, where are you after you graduate? Where are you going to be in 5 years? And then also, after you answer that, what's exciting for you right now that you're working on currently?
It's a loaded question. Honestly, I don't really know where I see myself. I've thought about going to grad school. I don't really know if that's for me, though. Honestly, just continuing to make work. I mean, I think that's the most important thing. That's the most important thing I'm interested in right now. And as far as what I'm working on now is I just finished a cabinet that shoots confetti. Pretty stoked on that.
Where did you put that in?
I was going to install it, but I got a flat the other day, so I couldn't drive it in.
Do you feel like you're moving more into like performative pieces?
I wouldn't say performative because I'm not much of a performer. I think I'm more interested in moving parts now, or like we've talked about with using woodworking as a vehicle, using things like how the cabinet works is it's a piston fit drawer, so when you close the drawer it shoots the confetti out the top. So it's kind of like making this thing that is very precise and you have to spend a lot of time to perfect, kind of just like gives you like this like flop of confetti, like great job, you know. Yeah. Scott?
So it's been almost 5 years since you graduated. Did you, when you graduated, see yourself being where you are now?
No.
Good way or bad way?
I don't think in either way, honestly. I don't know, I didn't really know what to expect coming out of school. I think it's a little bit of shell shock when you get out of school because you're in this community, this really tight-knit community where you're all making work constantly. And then when you get out, you start to see people stop making work. And I think the most important thing is just to like continue at all costs. I mean, you don't need to have a full shop to continue making work. You can, I mean, if you're a woodworker, you can be painting on wood. You can be like doing chainsaw work or even just like with a knife. I mean, you see me all the time, sit at like the desk and just like whittle. Just like stay active and keep making stuff. I think it's the most important thing.
So it seems like you had that body of work which were in some way anthropomorphic and of a scale that engaged a person physically,
Mm-hmm.
not holding it but being with it.
Yeah.
And it looks like more recently you're working with things that are smaller and experienced in a much different way.
Yeah.
And is that a matter of space constraints, or is that other work not of interest?
I think what happened with the other work is it was all in the same vein and all in the same direction. And I think I just got to a point where I was like, I knew the outcome of that work. You know, I knew I could do a drawing and I already knew what it was going to look like by the time it was done. I feel like with the work that I'm doing now, it's a little more, I don't know if this is going to work and I might have to mess around with it, and, you know, it's more challenging and more fabrication. And
Is the process of getting from the other work, is it like a completely different thing, or is it just a part of new problems present themselves? It's part of continuing to make work.
yeah,
And the work progresses from that to what it is now.
yeah, I mean,
Because it feels like a refinement
Yeah.
in some way of the same basic issues and the same basic potential that furniture has as a respondent to human
yeah, and
engagement.
it's funny because I think my work has definitely gotten more woodworky than it was before. I don't know.
But is object still important to you, like making object, and more specifically functional objects? Is the object important, or the idea of the object more important to you? I mean, I could see the somewhat of a synchronization between the object and yourself. Like your animation character sort of sometimes like a persona of yourself, sometimes doesn't, sometimes looks like someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was a way of projecting yourself through an object. But now, like more so of a current work, there seems to be a shift
Yeah, I definitely was drawing from characters in my own life, like personalities in my own life with the previous work. And I think just like I got to a point, like I said before, where I knew the outcome of it, and I wasn't really interested in making one for every single person that I know. So I wanted to move on and make work that was more, I think it kind of keeps the same idea. I think there's definitely like this timid kind of like low, but also kind of like excited, like kind of like joking about a lot of it that continues throughout the work. But I think it's honestly more personal than it was before. There's more of a narrative than an object. Does that make sense? I guess that's like the way to phrase
Well,
it.
certainly if the experience is more interesting and and feeds you better than making the larger object.
Yeah.
That's
This
as
is
personal as
working
it gets.
sorry.
What?
You done?
Depends. What are you gonna say?